I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Today, let's explore the ways in which you can finance your pro wrestling career. Getting started in the world of professional wrestling is an expensive pursuit, and you may need to save up some funds to get yourself going at the very outset of this brand new career, because there's a whole bunch of things that you're going to end up paying for out of pocket. So of course you're paying for your training and you're paying for your gear, and there's also presentation gear like the jacket or the robe that you might wear to the ring. What about the business cards that you're going to need to hand out for networking purposes? And the travel expenses while you're out on the road, like gas and tolls, or the luggage you might have to buy so that you're able to go on the road. And even if you're expert at doing meal prep, you're still buying that food somewhere before you hit the road. All of these things are expenses that you are going to be paying for. I know there are people who are attracted to professional wrestling as a pursuit because they see it as a path to fame and riches. And if all you've ever been exposed to is professional wrestling at the very top of the industry, you might be under the misimpression that making those big dollars on the big stages is what everybody does. And yet nothing could be further from the truth. To offer some perspective on the strata throughout professional wrestling, I'll use an example not from wrestling, but from music. About a decade ago, I saw the band U2 on their 360 tour on Lincoln Financial Field right here in Philadelphia. And concert attendance estimates for that day estimate that 100,000 people were at the link to watch U2 play. If someone were to watch an event like WrestleMania, and imagine that that scale of event is average for all professional wrestling events, that would be a gross misconception. It would be like me observing U2 in front of 100,000 people at Lincoln Financial Field and imagining that is the size crowd every band draws. So if you're considering embarking on the pro wrestling journey and you imagine, well, financing up front's not going to be a big deal because I'm probably only a couple months away from making my entrance at WrestleMania and collecting that big fat paycheck, I'm here with your reality check. And there's no better way to do it than to root it in the reality I know best, my own pro wrestling career. I started in 1994, and my first year in professional wrestling, I was paid $0. My second full year in professional wrestling, I was paid exactly once. Once. And I went digging through my records. In my third year in professional wrestling, I wrestled a total of 39 matches, and I was paid for 3 of them, each time $5. And my fourth year in professional wrestling, I wrestled 60 matches. I was paid 42 of those times, each payday averaged between $25 and $30. And my fifth year in professional wrestling, I wrestled 113 matches, and I was paid for 104 of them. Even my fifth year in wrestling, I was not being paid 100% of the time, I was paid 92% of the time. I am sharing this data with you to give you a realistic glimpse into what your apprentice phase in professional wrestling might be like. I did not have very good matches my first few years in professional wrestling. Anytime I got paid, even $5, it was a gift. And truth be told, looking back on it with the perspective that I have now, I probably should have been paying the people that gave me stage time in front of the paying customers that allowed me to hone my craft and essentially have practice matches on what was meant to be professional wrestling cards. I feel that way because those terrible rookie performances of mine had way more value to me than they did to the people that had to suffer through my tripping and botching all over the ring. I think of those first 4 or 5 years of my wrestling career as my apprentice phase. I was not yet a journeyman. And for me, financially speaking, those first 4 or 5 years were a real struggle, and I'm going to share with you some ways in which I was able to finance my very expensive pro wrestling habit. When I was just starting out in professional wrestling, I juggled 4 different retail jobs that luckily were all centered in the same shopping mall. And because all the managers of the different stores knew each other, I was able to get them to coordinate when making my schedule. And I also kept a 5th part-time job where I would work graveyard shift installing fiber optic cable for the company GPU. So during normal retail hours, I would bounce back and forth between different shops at the mall, and after hours, I'd be up in ceilings somewhere dropping down fiber optic cable for telephones and faxes. Because I had to keep my weekends clear, I needed Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays for bookings and for wrestling-related travel. That meant I had to work my tail off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I also needed to make sure that each of these jobs only considered me on a part-time basis, because there was no job at that time that I could dedicate 40 hours a week to. When I was in my early 20s, juggling 4 retail jobs and having a night gig was something I could do while standing on my head. But by the time I got even into my mid-20s, I was sick of that grind already, and I did settle in to a 9-to-5 full-time gig, which provided me with health benefits and vacation time. And in the almost 10 years that I ended up holding that job, I don't think I ever used a vacation day for vacation. I used that for wrestling bookings, and any time that my travel schedule ended up overlapping with a work day. You might discover a combination of full-time and or part-time work that works for you when it comes to financing your wrestling career. But I also want to offer you a couple outside-the-box options as well. Did your parents, or maybe even your grandparents, ever give you a savings bond as a birthday gift? Maybe you, just like I once did, have a desk drawer full of savings bonds, and you might know you can cash them in once you turn 18. However, most of them do not mature or reach their full face value until you've held on to them for a period of 20 years. So if you happen to get a savings bond, but you only got it 5 years ago from your nana, it may not necessarily cash in for the value on the face of the savings bond. It might say $100, and when you go to cash it in, you get $30. Before you make the decision to cash in one of those savings bonds, I would encourage you to check with a banker at your local branch so you know exactly what you're going to end up with on the tail end of that transaction. I had about $6,000 in savings bonds when I needed to buy my first house, but they had not matured when I cashed them in, and I ended up walking out of the bank that day with less than half of what the face value of those bonds happened to be. If you're looking to finance your pro wrestling career and savings bonds don't happen to be the sort of thing that you've collected, maybe there's something else you've collected, and if so, you might want to find out what the market is like on websites like eBay. eBay is where a giant chunk of my personal comic book collection ended up being auctioned off, and that money was instrumental at different times in financing various opportunities that came my way through the world of pro wrestling. And if you want to go even further outside the box, consider applying for a personal loan from a major bank. Most major banks will give personal loans to people that have good credit. I've only ever carried a personal loan twice in my life, and I want to give you this bit of advice. The interest rate on these loans can vary wildly, and it's in your best interest to do a little shopping around. Just doing a little Googling around, I was able to find major banks that offered personal loans that had APRs, annual percentage rates, that varied between 5.9% up to 36% for the loan. Just because a bank is willing to approve you for a personal loan doesn't mean it's the kind of loan that you want. So make sure you know what kind of interest you're paying in that annual percentage rate before you put your name on the dotted line. And last but not least, if you're looking for a way to finance your journey into professional wrestling, consider that personal loans do come from places other than banks. They come from private lenders as well, and that includes family and friends that you might be very well connected to. If you do decide to go that route, seeking a personal loan from someone that you know privately, keep in mind that you can go about it one of two ways. You can structure that loan informally. It's just what you agree upon between each other. Or if it is for a larger amount of money, the person offering it to you might want it to be structured through a private note, which their financial institution will issue. So it makes it a slightly more formal process, even though you are just paying the money back to the individual. It is only a select few professional wrestlers that are able to make a living within the industry, and even fewer actually become wealthy as a result of doing it. For the vast majority of us out there, we're always looking for new ways to help finance our pro wrestling career. And if you've got any interesting hacks, I would love to hear them. Won't you please drop them below in the comments section? And while you're busy doing all of that, make sure that you subscribe to us here at Till We Make It. Make sure that you like this video and also ring the notification bell because it pleases the YouTube algorithm. You keep on being awesome, and I will keep on making the videos. Together, we will keep on faking it.